Asteroid of fear.
Hey everyone, before we get started with today's episode, I wanted to give a trigger warning. In this episode, we discuss suicide, suicide ideation, and ultimately an attempt. So, definitely a trigger warning. If you have children in the car, you might want to hit pause and go back and listen to this episode later, unless they're the appropriate age. Also, regarding this topic, in terms of the discussion, there might be things that are said that you agree with or disagree with. Please keep those to yourself. This is not necessarily a subject to agree or disagree, other than we should agree that people need to reach out. When they reach this place, they need to reach out for help. And last I heard, I know they were trying to do away with the 988, so I'm not 100% what the status is on that and the funding. But if you're having suicidal ideation or you need someone to speak with, you can call 988. And there are plenty of resources. You can contact myself, Angie, and yeah, there's a number of people I've interviewed who are in this space. This is their life. They're willing to help, listen. And so, yeah, if you're at that point, reach out. If I cannot help you, I can listen, and I can always point you in the right direction. Or try to. But anyway, it was a great episode. I enjoyed talking to her very much. There were some fun moments and some laughter, but then there was some serious notes and a serious discussion. So, hope you guys enjoy. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Men of the House podcast. And today we have Angie Hawkins, and she is the author of Running in Slippers. And I'm excited because in her profile it says, "Into the Ocean Navy SEAL Style." And everybody knows I was in the Navy. And I love that I love SEALs. I love the mindset. I listen to a lot of podcasts around that. And yeah, once we get into the story, because I know I listened to some episodes, yeah, it's just about taking that leap a little bit like I did when I decided not to return to corporate. So, how's it going today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Yes, you're very welcome. I'm super excited, like I stated, because very similarly, after 12 years in corporate and getting laid off, I made the decision not to return to corporate and or safety, certainty. And while scary, and as I approach 2 years of podcasting, it's been challenging but rewarding. And so let's get into your challenging yet rewarding story. Where did you grow up?
I was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Do you know where that is?
I've heard of it, and I drove through when we flew into Chicago and drove to Michigan and passed through Indiana at the bottom briefly.
Yeah, yeah, you got close. You probably wouldn't have drove through Fort Wayne because it's in
Yeah.
northeast Indiana.
Oh, wait, we went through, is it Valparaiso?
Yeah, Valparaiso.
I
Wow,
remember
I've been
seeing
away
that
for a while because I can't
because
remember the other northwestern
one of the
cities.
one of my front desk associates, my lead front desk person, was from Valparaiso, and I remember when we were driving seeing that. I'm like, oh, that's where she's from, and that's where she grew up. But yeah, that's kind of been my experience with Indiana passing through, and the Midwest for me has been, spending some time in Michigan, as that's where my wife's family's from. But I love
Oh,
it up
okay.
there.
Yeah, Michigan's beautiful. Yeah, so Fort Wayne, Indiana is just a typical, I would call it a typical Midwestern city.
Hmm.
I don't know where your listeners are from.
Everywhere.
I lived in Chicago for a long time, so to
Okay.
Illinoisans, I would always say it's very similar to Peoria, Illinois. So it still has an urban aspect, but it was small.
Okay. And how was that? So I grew up in a town of 400 people, and maybe it was like 800 people by the time I left. So what are we talking about?
I don't know the exact population, probably several hundred thousand. My high
Hmm.
school had about 2,000 students,
Oh,
which I
wow.
know that's like decent size for a high school.
Hmm. And what's it like growing up in the Midwest? Is it is it kind of like TV portrays it, or what was your daily life like as a young person? What were you into, and kind of what was going on during the time, like in the years? Because we can now associate time frames and what's going on with the world, um, and how it shapes us as adults.
Oh, absolutely. Especially, I was born in 1980, so I grew up in the
Okay.
80s and 90s, which is totally different, especially in terms of social media and stuff
Yeah.
like that, which I'm
76 here, so.
okay. I am extremely grateful there was not social media when I was growing up.
Hmm.
And it's interesting that you asked, like, how was Fort Wayne growing up? Because I've never really looked at it that way because I had uh, I had a like on the surface, it was a nice upbringing,
Hmm.
but as an adult, seeing how I developed as an adult, there were actually a lot of struggles and challenges in my upbringing. So I feel like I always focus on my family dynamics when I think of my childhood. So it's funny how when you asked me to reflect on like, oh, how was Fort Wayne growing up? It's like, oh, I don't know. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. But the family dynamics is kind of it's it's everything. Because I think, I as a 49-year-old Gen Xer and being in this weird spot before the internet, and now we have the internet, um, it's I feel like we're kind of learning that how our parents grew up and what their parents passed on to them subconsciously and inadvertently, got modeled and passed to us. And, I feel kind of like we're in this, our age group generation is in this gap of leaving some of that behind and old family dynamics and kind of modernizing it to, kind of break some of the generational curses, if you will.
No, agree. And I actually love how even more men are getting into breaking the generational curses because I know for a while it was like put on the brave face and the strong face and
Yeah.
don't talk about what's really going on. But I mean, I think we have the responsibility to be the generational cycle breakers, which is it's a huge responsibility. It is not easy, but it's totally worth it, and I think it's rewarding for the generations to come.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, it's I feel it almost like being stuck in between mom and dad in a way is what it feels
Yeah.
like to me internally. But then also when I take a look at the world and everything online and the amount of division, um, that's exactly what it kind of feels like as a society too.
Yes.
And it's very unnerving, but that's why we do this is through conversations and perspective, and to realize and understand that we as individuals do not have to succumb, believe, carry, hold on to all that generational stuff that has been passed to us, and that we can make anew based on a platform or foundation of what I think is for the world, which is love, compassion, understanding, listening to one another, understanding that we're all doing the best with what we have, and we want love and to be loved. And yeah, you and then you see it on kind of the macro level in that everything is based on putting us into little categories and all that, and we're just so much more than that. And yeah, it's hard. It's kind of
Yeah,
hurtful.
you're a deep thinker. I like that. And that's probably why, because I'm similar to you. I actually quit my corporate job a month ago because I it was toxic and I
Hmm.
just couldn't handle corporate America anymore. And I actually started a coaching business for women. It's called Inner Glow Coaching, but it's basically to help women who are stuck in people pleasing and self doubt to go on this journey like I did from self loathing to self love. But anyway, the reason I'm doing it is because, to your point, I feel like there is a very large divide right now. And it's like you can either contribute to the negativity and the fear propaganda and all of that, or you can contribute to raising the vibration
Yeah.
of the universe. And yeah, so what you're doing and what I'm trying to do, that's all contributing to raising the vibration of the universe. And it's kind of like picking up litter. Like you don't really feel
Yeah.
like you're doing
Oh.
much, just picking up one piece when, there's like islands of plastic in the ocean. But I
Hmm.
do think every bit of good energy that we put out helps.
Yeah, my analogy was what I feel like I see a lot of is, if you want to be successful, the key is to elevate yourself, not to
Yeah.
diminish others.
Oh,
But I
absolutely.
see more diminishment of others as opposed to um, true support, because I think I made the comment today somewhere was, be wary of those who pat you on the back. They might just be looking for where they're going to put the knife.
Yeah, and those are
Um,
the most dangerous because some are overt, so you know to stay away, but some pretend to be friends.
Yeah, and I feel like we're in a society that can't seem to comprehend that there's enough to go around. Like we don't have to, you know, um, exclude others or push others away for our own advancement. There's plenty. There's a lot, but I don't know. That's just the way I think. But what were your family dynamics like? Do you have any siblings? I'm an only child, so.
Okay. I do have a sibling, and when I speak of my family dynamics, going back to what you were saying
Mhm.
earlier, I totally understand why my parents are the way they are. So anything I say is not a criticism of them or my grandparents or whatever. I'm
Right.
just stating the facts of my experience. So I do have a sister. So we're actually half sisters. My mom was married to someone else before she was married to my
Hmm.
dad, had my sister, and I know he her first husband was toxic and a deadbeat, whatever, and she basically fled that relationship. She married my dad and had me. And so my dynamics growing up were interesting. My mom was extremely critical.
Hmm.
So I felt like I was always under a microscope. I felt like I couldn't do anything right. She was very angry all the time. And I know a lot of that stemmed from my dad was passive. He was an alcoholic. He didn't really help out around the house. He was physically present, but that was it. He was just kind of there. He would go to work, he would come home and drink and watch TV and go to
That's a
bed.
big
So,
man problem right now. And I had to break that for myself. And what you said about there is, I think this old adage of past generations was that's what the man did. It was about being physically present. The emotions weren't a thing, but now women can support themselves and they can support a whole family. They're independent. They don't need the physical presence, they need the emotional presence.
yeah, and I think that played a huge role in how because I became fiercely independent, and it was because I never had that like, yeah, that male presence there. Again, he was like physically there, but he wasn't really there. So I just learned to rely on myself. And also, like in hindsight, I think he was honestly just really depressed and had mental health issues. But again, like this is the 80s and 90s. Like
Yeah.
men weren't going to therapy or getting help for that
Well,
kind
we
of
didn't
stuff.
realize that. I think it took a while to go, that's just the symptom, you know,
Yeah.
of something else. One of your needs is not being met, whether you're not meeting them yourself or somebody else is not meeting them. Yeah, we've
And I
figured out a lot.
Oh, for sure. And again in hindsight, because again, I'm not criticizing my parents. I
Yeah,
get this. I think their cycles were feeding into each other because the more my mom got frustrated by him not actively participating, the more because she criticized him as well, not
right.
just, me and my sister. So then he would shut down even more. And so that fed into
Well,
each
they
other
weren't
as well.
aware of it either. We were in a period where I think, um, one of the things with having the internet and instantaneous information is awareness. You know, I think
Oh,
that probably the people in the 80s and stuff, it just wasn't on their radar.
yeah.
And yeah, I think that lack of awareness, you can't do anything about it if you're not aware of it. And I don't know, I wonder how the world in general started to go, started to think of this like 30 years later of going, let's look back and see why these things actually have the impact. I don't know where in the world we started becoming more aware and thinking that these things could be connected.
Well, so on one hand, I do very much agree with you because self-awareness is key in many
Mhm.
things. But on the other hand, because I actually wrote a memoir about my life experiences, which included my childhood. And one of the things I mentioned in my book is that my parents, I never was hugged. They never told me they loved me, things like that. And my mom's response to that was she was like, well, it wasn't until the 90s, apparently, like this book came out about the
Oh.
importance of like words of affirmation and physical touch
Mhm.
and parenting or something. She was like, well, it wasn't until the 90s that this book came out and people really understood that. And I was like, you need to read a book in the 90s to know to hug and love your kids.
Oh, that's a
So
good
there's
point.
also like a instinctive part to it as well.
Did your mom's parents do that with her? And that's where
Probably
this all
not.
gets handed
Yeah.
down, as
Yeah.
if we model, you know, uh, well, I always say that the podcast is here. My daughter can always go back and listen to it. But we know that children don't often listen. They're going to
Yeah.
imitate, model. And that has been one of since leaving corporate and stopping alcohol and all kinds of stuff. I've started to understand that example I set is probably more important than
I
any
like
of the
that.
words I say. But yeah, and it goes back kind of to that modeling thing. I wonder if your mom, the book is one thing, but it's like you said, do you really need a book? There should be some sort of instinct to nurture.
Yeah, and that's why like that response was so shocking to me, especially as a mother. Like I guess I could see a dad saying that,
Yeah.
but to have my mom say that to me, like also I don't know exactly which year in the 90s this book was written, but I lived in my parents' house until 1998. So it's
Mhm.
like there was still time to read this book and use the information.
Yeah. So what did you so you have this family dynamic and you're able to see this. How does this influence during these years and you're starting to piece all this together and you can kind of see and understand when you get ready to leave high school or in those years, how is this influencing what you want to do with your life? What are you thinking at this time?
So my introduction into the real world was kind of extreme because of our family dynamics and also another overarching dynamic in our home because I lived in a house with my parents and my sister, but
Hmm.
we were all like super disconnected. Like we didn't have conversations like, "Hey, how are you doing? How's
No
this
dinner,
going?"
no dinner at the
Yeah,
table.
It was just very formal. Basically, our
Ah,
family was run like a business. That's the best way I can describe it.
interesting.
So it was just very disconnected. I I became super absorbed in school. I was a perfectionist. I wanted to earn good grades. And then that spiraled into an eating disorder. And my junior year, I basically started starving myself. And the summer before my senior year, I weighed 85 pounds. And my family, like we swept everything under the rug. So I weighed 85 pounds. My parents never even said anything to me. They would make comments like, oh, you should be eating more, blah, 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 but they never, ever addressed it until one day my mom approached me, and apparently some of my friends' parents had approached her about
Hmm.
my emaciated appearance. And this is what she told me. She said it was embarrassing for her to have people bring this up to her. So she wanted me to start going to therapy to fix this thing. And and I didn't really want to go to therapy, but I was just feeling basically hopeless and miserable. So I
Hmm.
was like, okay, here's like my chance to fix this. So I'll just go. And so I go to therapy. And so, of course, it immediately comes out these family
Yeah.
issues. So the therapist, and I don't even know if this is legal. Like I was in high school, but she was like, she brought my mom into the room. Oh, because that was the other thing. I was a senior in high school. I had my own car. I would drive myself back and forth to school. But
Hmm.
to ensure that I went to these therapy appointments, my mom would pick me up, take me there, wait in the waiting room, and then take me back to school to
Oh,
ensure.
wow.
That's how hardcore she was about me going. And so my mom was in the waiting room, so the therapist brought her in, and the therapist basically said to my mom, like, these are the issues. Are you willing to address them? And I don't even remember what my mom said. I just remember it being horribly awkward. And then after therapy, my mom's taking me back to school, and she said, would you like to keep going to therapy? And like, I hated it, like, because it was so awkward.
Hmm.
Like, I was missing school. Like, I just didn't like it. So I told her no. So I never went back again. And so obviously the problem didn't go away. So my mom threatened me because, like, my entire life, all I wanted to do when I turned 18 is move out of that house.
Hmm.
So that's like all I was focused on. So my mom was very aware of this. So she told me if I didn't gain weight, then I had to live at home and go to the local community college. I could not go away to college. So fear is an amazing motivator. So
Yes.
I was like, oh, hell no. I'm definitely moving out of this house as soon as possible. So I just like started eating everything in sight and gained a ton of weight. So then like I just physically I felt horrible because I gained a
Hmm.
lot of weight. Like I think I gained like 30 pounds in a month.
Oh,
So I
wow.
was like sweating all the time. Like it's not good for your health. Even though I was back to like a normal weight, it's just like not, it just wasn't
Yeah, your
healthy.
body's trying to catch up, and even, I mean, even just what you did to your body by not eating that
Yeah.
alone, and then as we know, most things that have too far of a separation, not gradual, like people going viral or winning the lotto, it always fucks them over.
Yes. Like, yeah, anything in extreme is not good. So it
Yeah.
would have been more healthy to gain that weight over maybe like 6 months, but I did it in a very fast time. And that was another thing. I was sweating a lot. And I remember I would like sweat so much at night, my sheets would be soaked.
Hmm.
And then my mom would yell at me, like, why are you sweating so much? And it's like, Jesus Christ, I can't do anything right.
Now, how's
So,
your relationship with food at this time, though? Because, you go from where you're kind of starving yourself to, oh, I mean, what what are you thinking? Like, how is it?
well, the only thing, well, first of all, my relationship with food has never been the same. I will say that. At that time, I just remember feeling so hopeless and out of control. And it didn't even just affect my food. I went from being a straight A student to like almost failing things. But the thing is, and this was the other part about it, nobody really cared because after your first semester of your senior year, that's
Hmm.
all colleges look at. So when I started like failing and stuff, it really didn't affect college applications or anything. So like
Right.
my teachers weren't concerned, my parents weren't concerned, but like I was just like totally unraveling and falling apart. And then I started hanging out with this girl. We were like total opposites. Like
Hmm.
she actually came from a very wealthy family. Her dad was a lawyer, but they were also very strict. So you know how kids with strict
Yeah.
parents, like they wanted to do all the drugs and like go to all the
Hmm.
parties. And so I started hanging out with her. I wasn't into like the drugs like she
Hmm.
was. I did drink and I think I tried to smoke pot once, but she was like heavy into the drugs. So I was like around it. But it just even just being out of the house was an escape.
What were you, so you have this kind of a hot mess thing going on over here. What was your on the more stable, grounded side? What is your brain pursuing in terms of what's your idea of what you're going to get an education in and what you're going to do for a career?
That's a great question because to this day, I think it's a horrible idea to have 18-year-olds decide what they want to do for the rest of their life.
Agree.
Because my senior year in high school, I had no idea. Because, like, again, like I'm basically in survival mode because
Right.
yeah, I was 85 pounds, then I gained a bunch of weight. I'm like failing school, but all I'm focused on is like, I want to get into a college that is at least 2 hours away from here so that I do not have to live at home. That's all I was focused on. And then, like to your point, like I did get accepted to a school, and then it's like, oh, you have to declare a major. And I was like, what the hell? I don't
Yeah.
know. I think my first major in college was psychology because I think
Oh,
I was interested in like, what the hell is wrong with me?
yeah.
But then I eventually changed to a business major and I did get a degree in finance. But even then, I remember the only reason I chose business because it seemed practical. But
Hmm.
then even within the business school, you have to choose your concentration. I think it was
Yeah.
marketing, operations, and finance. And like I didn't know. And I had this summer job and this girl, I just loved her personality. She was like super outgoing and I just really liked her. And she was in school studying to get a finance degree. So
Mhm.
that's the reason why I chose finance. It wasn't because it was interesting or whatever. It's like, oh, she's cool and she's doing it, so I want to do it too.
Wow. And it isn't it interesting how we m- make some or come to some of the conclusions we do about some of the biggest things in our life. Although there are plenty of people with philosophy degrees that do other stuff, but finance is pretty specific.
Yeah.
Mine's in healthcare administration, so it is
Okay.
what it is, you know. Um, now, w- did did your relationship with eating weight, food, and all that change during college, or was this after?
Um, it actually was, I don't want to say normal. I I know my freshman year I think I gained even more weight
Hmm.
because I moved out of my parents' house. But, it's like I lived in a home. My mom would always prepare the meals. She would
Right.
buy the food. I had no idea how to live on my own. So I would go to Taco Bell and
Yeah.
whatever. I just like didn't have a routine. So I did gain some weight my freshman year. But then that's when I realized, okay, I need a routine. I started working out. I got better habits but then I was in college, so I was also drinking.
Yeah.
So there was also that. I wouldn't say it actually got worse after I graduated,
Mhm.
and in hindsight, I would probably say because I didn't realize how disgruntled I was with corporate America till I actually just quit a month ago.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, a lot of things seem a lot more obvious. I don't think I enjoyed my occupation. Like I
Hmm.
could do it, it was fine. I was making money. I definitely didn't enjoy it. So I think I turned to, because basically what my eating disorder was for about 20 years was I overexercised and underate. I never got to the point where I was like 85 pounds. I
Mhm.
always looked healthy, which is also kind of a dangerous slope because by society standards, I'm
Really?
overachieving because I was like running marathons and I'm going to the gym. So that's actually things that are praised. But I was actually doing it in an unhealthy way because I was doing it to numb out and distract myself from the other things that were going on.
Yeah, so, like when I look at it from the outside and I'm looking at your life like in blocks and how you got here, um, I look at, okay, you left home and that gave you that first little bit of mental reprieve, emotional reprieve that
Yeah.
got you away. And so you were kind of able to, well, maybe normalize to society standards in a way, get yourself normal, but it, you know, while getting away, changing people, places, and things is often a first step. It's still not going to the root cause. Did you do any
Right.
therapy or figure out any of the root cause stuff while you were in your collegiate experience?
Oh, absolutely not. It didn't even occur to me to do anything like that until my late 30s.
Okay, so you come out of college, and what's your first career?
My very first job out of college, I worked at a bank. I was basically a credit analyst for the Small Business Administration loan. So I don't know if you've heard of that program, but
Mhm.
basically it's harder for startup businesses to get loans. So there's this government entity called the Small Business Administration, and they will subsidize these loans. So there's stricter requirements for the application process. But I mean, it was just a mindless job. Like almost everybody gets approved. Like there's a lot of like Subway franchises, so it
Oh, okay.
becomes very standard after a while because it's like, oh, another Subway franchise. So you know exactly what's in the contract because Subway provides like the fixtures and the branding, whatever. So it was pretty mindless. And again, I think that's why I started focusing on food and exercise because it's like, oh, this is boring and this is my life now. So what can I do to escape?
Yeah, so a lot of people, especially young, I went to college much later, but it's like when you're young, you feel like you're modeling society's little cutout for you, high school, college,
Yeah.
first job, but nobody ever gives any thought to, do I like it? This is the way, or maybe they're not um, thinking about, let's say, the bigger things in life. They're like, this is just life, and this is the model, and I'm just going to go along and follow this model, and hopefully in
Yeah.
20 years, I'll accumulate a 3 or 4 bedroom house, and blah, 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 blah.
See, I don't even know if I was focused on the end goal. I'm like, this is just life. And to your point earlier, I was just modeling what my parents did. You don't necessarily like your job. It's just something that you do every day and that's your life. So I just thought that's what it was.
So when do you start looking inward and going, huh, is this all that life is? This is boring. I understand you're exercising and doing these other things because that's where you're getting your excitement from. But what you're really doing is um, distracting yourself from something else that's unmet internally. So when did you start looking inward and going, is this life? Is I want more?
So I definitely started to get the itch. So I was at that job at the bank for about a
Mhm.
year. I got another job. Like none of these companies even exist anymore. It was at Sally Mae, which
I've
used to
heard
be a
of it.
student loan company. I'm gonna call.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I worked in finance. And again, it was like I could do it. It was fine, but it was just really boring. So I just started to get this itch. Like to your point, like there has to be more than this. And so I was living in Indianapolis and working in Indianapolis, and I had always wanted to live in Chicago because I love the idea of a big city because you can just get lost in the crowd. Because again, I grew up and my mom was
Everybody
very
knows everybody.
critical. What?
I said in small towns, everybody knows everybody, kind of.
Yeah, and it wasn't quite that bad in Fort Wayne or even in Indianapolis, but like I just wanted to be lost. Like I just wanted to be immersed in this big city experience. So I looked for a job in Chicago and I got the job. And so I moved to Chicago. And that was like, I think my first like earnest step
Yeah.
in like, I want a better life and I need to do something about it because it's not going to just fall on my lap. It might, but I felt like I actually had
It was very
agency.
intentional
Yes,
to
I felt
have
like
to
I
get up
had
and go
agency
to
to make the
Chicago.
change.
Yeah, because
Yes.
your first, I think, like intentionality, what stuck out to me was when you said at least 2 hours away from home. So it's like that was an intentional type of thing. And so what I see is like, yeah, you're here and you're like, there's got to be more. I need some more zest, some more oomph. And intentionally, I'm going to seek it out by going to the big city.
Yes.
Now, so the other relation I get in that is okay, the location, yes, but were you seeking any, like when you applied for the job, was it like, no, the job is the job as long as it gets me to Chicago, or were you looking at going, maybe I can find something that warms my heart a little more with the job?
I wish I could say that because that sounds better. No, it was like the job is the job. I just want to move to Chicago. I don't think I've ever really been obsessed with my career. It's always been like, as long as my pay is steadily increasing, I don't care about my title. I don't care about the company.
See, for me, I've never been able to separate who I am with what I do, because
Mm,
I always wanted to like join the military and stuff like
yeah.
that. And I graduated a year early out of high school and joined the military. Um, and I've cooked. I've done a lot of different things like mixed martial arts training facility, um, the military, but in the emergency room and healthcare and serving, they've all been kind of a little piece of my identity, but I didn't realize like they aren't my identity. Um, that I'm kind, caring, and compassionate, and and I like to serve, and how I serve just takes a different form. It's not who I
Ooh,
am. However,
yeah.
what I've done has always been important to me because that's who I am and that's what I care about. So I could never do like, something like you would never catch me working the front desk at an automotive place because I don't care about cars. I care about,
Yeah.
everything is mine has been at gyms, or a place of service.
I like how you reframed that because I was just getting ready to say, like, your job can be a part of your identity. I think
Right,
where people go wrong, and I've definitely gone wrong in other areas of my life, is when something is your entire identity.
right.
Because when that thing goes away, then you feel empty inside.
I was only able to reframe it after being laid off
Yeah,
and
okay.
feeling
But I
horribly.
but I like how you
Yeah,
framed it as like I serve people,
yes,
and then that could take any form.
yeah, yeah. So you make it to Chicago, and what do you get from that? I mean, you must get a sense of like, because I know I'm this kind of person. I've lived probably 14 places, but you're searching for something, and you think that that's what you're searching for, and you get there, but it's really internal. So what was that like
Yes.
when you got there? I mean, you got some relief. I'm sure you had some joy, and
Yeah, I would say the first year was amazing because I was like exploring, I was meeting new friends, and like the novelty was there for
Mhm.
quite a while. And then that's when reality set in because if for anyone who's listening who hasn't been to Chicago, it's similar to New York in that like it has like an energy to it which can be very exciting, but it can also wear you down. There's also a lot of anger in Chicago, and I'm an empath, so like I
Yeah,
would absorb all of this.
me too.
So I don't know if it was my internal, it's probably a combination of things, like my internal problems catching up to me because I was still trying to run away from them, and then all of this the energy from the city that I was constantly absorbing every day, like I started to feel exhausted all of the time. And then in the winter in Chicago, it's freezing, it's windy, and then that would affect me because I would just be depressed because I didn't want to go outside. So I loved Chicago, but it definitely started taking a toll on me. I lived there 11 years total.
Now, were you, it's easy to identify it like looking back. Um, did you feel it zapping you while you were there?
I did, but it's like there were so many different dynamics though, and it took me a while to start being able to put my finger on it because I was also in this really toxic relationship.
Mhm.
So I was very aware that that was sapping my energy. I also had some friendships, which I didn't realize until after I moved away. Like those were also zapping my energy. Again, I was just working jobs that
Yeah.
I was good at but didn't really like, which I, in hindsight, I can see that contributed to just feeling down and depressed. And then, of course, I was still over exercising and under eating, which that affects your physical and mental health as well. So there were all these different dynamics that I really couldn't pin down until hindsight.
So what's going on? Paint us a picture of being in Chicago and what's going on and when you're like, I gotta change something, something needs to go, something needs to give. What's what where are you? What is in that state? What's happening around you and what's the catalyst and what do you decide to do next that gets you out of Chicago? Where do you go from there?
So it was the shift was somewhat intentional, but again, I had all these different dynamics. And the toxic relationship was a big one because it was wearing me down and I was just feeling exhausted all the time. I knew what I was doing wasn't working for me. And then in 2017, the toxic boyfriend, he broke up with me. And then shortly thereafter, my dad passed away. So I was just launched into the worst grief of my entire life. And this was 2017. So obviously there was the internet and social media. It
Hmm.
wasn't like Instagram wasn't as robust as it is now, so to
Right.
speak. So there weren't a lot of resources for grief. Like if you Googled grief, it would there's like a step process.
Yeah.
And I thought like you just go through each
You go through the
step.
stages and
Yeah,
it's
you
done.
go through each step. They take an equal amount of time. I was thinking about it very logically. Okay, this will take about 3 months.
Your
3 months
finance brain.
goes by. Yeah. And I'm like rotating between all the things at once. And I'm like, I don't understand how this works. And again, it never like even occurred to me at that point to go to a therapist. And then yeah, and oh, my point about social media, like I see accounts now, like they're like solely about grief
Right.
or, and I'm like, and I always think like, wow, I wish this was available in 2017. So I think it's amazing that people are putting out more content about stuff like that. But I felt totally alone in my struggle. And again, like in my family of origin, we were conditioned to sweep things under the rug. So I didn't really tell anybody like how awful I felt. Plus, with grief, anyone who's been through heavy grief, I think could relate to this. After a few months, people stop asking you how you're doing. So it's
Mhm.
almost like even if I wasn't putting on the brave face, it was almost like people just expect you to like
Be
a
fine.
certain day passes and like you should be over it.
What's normal for them?
Yeah, and I think it's because we all are putting on the brave faces. So I think people like make themselves get over it or whatever, and that's just not healthy. So through that experience, I learned that I was a long-term griever. But the bright side of that is I realized how I was living was not working for me. And also during this time, when I was younger, and I left this out about my childhood, I loved to read and I loved to write.
Hmm.
And so much so when I was in fifth grade, I won this writing contest out of the entire school.
Oh, this is
I
the exciting part that I remember from the podcast. All right, go ahead and tell it. Sorry for interrupting.
That's okay. And then I think in high school I won like another writing contest or like I placed. I don't think I won, but I loved writing. And then of course I go to college. See, and that's the funny thing. I went to college. It didn't even like occur to me to study writing or anything like that. I studied
English.
finance. So I didn't write for like 20 years. And when I was living in Chicago, I had this idea for a writing blog. But I was so different back then. Like I'm a lot more confident now. So back then I was like, I cannot put myself out there unless I take a writing class and get polished in my writing, and then I'll put this blog out. So the only writing class I could find on the weekends, because I worked all day during the week. So the last thing I wanted to do after work was go to like a 3 hour writing class. That sounded exhausting. So I found this writing class on the weekend, but it was a sketch comedy writing class at the Second City, Chicago, which again, like for me back then, that was terrifying because it's like, I'm not funny, I'm not a
Yeah.
writer, but I was like so determined to get back into writing that I took that class. So luckily I signed up for it before the breakup and my dad died, which was amazing because like that was
Committed.
for months. That 3 hours on Sunday afternoon was like the only 3 hours of my week that I actually enjoyed. But like the writing just like lit something up inside of me. And I ended up taking the whole program, if you go all the way through it, lasts an entire year because anyone can take levels 1 through 4. And then you have to apply to get accepted into levels 5 and 6 because in those levels, your class is actually writing and producing a show that goes on stage, so I did that. And this whole process took a year. And then it ended, and I was like, oh my God, I love writing. What am I going to do with this? And also, and this is also around the time I started realizing how Chicago was just bringing me down.
Mhm.
And I had a friend who had lived in Hawaii. I would go there every year and visit her. I always wanted to live there. So in my mind, I'm like, I want to move to Hawaii and I want to be a writer. But it seemed ridiculous because I'm like
Yeah.
living in Chicago, like I just have this little blog going that nobody even knows about. So I went to this motivational seminar. I Googled like motivational seminars in Chicago. And I went to this totally lame motivational seminar. And I write about it in my book. It's kind of a long story. It's kind of funny. But the good thing that came out of this motivational seminar is there was this girl there, and she was like, yeah, I'm going to this motivational seminar next month in Denver. It has Gary Vee and Tony Robbins.
Oh,
And I was like, wait, Gary Vee and Tony Robbins are going to be at the same event? And she was like, yeah. And she gave me the information. The very next day, I booked a ticket to the seminar. And this is the key part of the story. There's different levels of tickets for this seminar. You can sit in the cheap seats. I think it was like $20 or something.
hmm.
You can sit on the floor and have the option. There was like a lunch and learn with Gary Vee. I think that was like $500. Or you can sit in the front 2 rows, have lunch, the Q&A with Gary Vee at lunch, and meet Tony Robbins. And that was dollars.
How much?
So I,
How
but
much was it? Because it cut out for a second.
oh, sorry, 2000.
Okay. All right.
And Tony Robbins events aren't cheap. This was
No.
only like he had like it was a 4 hour portion of this seminar. Like his
Hmm.
entire weekend events are like tens and thousands of dollars. And they're probably even more now. But anyway, I originally only bought the Gary Vee option, which was $500 because I was not confident. I felt like an imposter. I was like, I don't even belong at that event. And so I but the wheels were turning because I was like, I want to move to Hawaii. I want to be a writer. So my job in Chicago, I was working from home most of the time anyway. So I was like, hey, if I arrange this so I can work remote from Hawaii, then I can just keep my job and move. So to test that theory, one of my friends and her husband own a condo in Florida. I was like, I'm just going to go to Florida for a month and work remote and see how that goes. And then if it goes well, I can like just pitch this to my manager. So I went to Florida for a month. And while I was in Florida, I remember I woke up one morning and my intuition was like, upgrade your ticket to meet Tony Robbins. And this is back when I ignored my intuition. So I was like, no, 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 no. And then like maybe a few days later, the same thing happened. So I called and I upgraded my ticket to the Tony Robbins option. And and the mind shift was like so powerful that that's why this is an important part of the story, because in that moment I was like, I want to play life at a higher level, and that's not going to happen if I don't believe in myself and I don't invest in myself. And even though it was just a seat in the the stadium, it meant more than that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it was like
To
I'm
seat at the
doing this for
table.
myself. Yes, it's like I am deciding, to your point, like it was intentional. I'm deciding to play at a higher level, so this is what I'm doing. It wasn't even about meeting him or anything.
Well,
It's
it's
like
about that. Um, it's about valuing yourself because you're like, I'm worth it. I'm worth the extra $1,500.
that was a huge part of it, because at that time, which was why I only bought the $500 ticket in the first place, like I didn't feel like I was worthy of investing in myself. But I'm like, no, I'm if I'm going to play at a higher level, then I'm investing in myself. So anyway, the seminar was like the week after I got back from Florida. So my
You're primed.
yeah, so I was like, okay, I'm going to Florida to prove that I can work remote. I'm going to this seminar and I'm going to be so delirious with motivation that all I have to do is slide into my manager's office and ask him if I can work remote. But the seminar was amazing. And again, I can't even tell you what was said, because again, it was more about what it represented, because I was there, I was playing at a higher level. And like the meet and greet with Tony Robbins, it was labeled a meet and greet, so I thought I could like have a conversation with him. Like we just got our pictures taken like quickly and then like we're ushered out. And I still have the picture because it's like a Polaroid. It's not even
Yeah,
like a nice high quality picture. They didn't even give us the digital version. But I still have that picture because of what it represents. Because I was
yeah.
like, this was my decision to invest in myself and bet on myself and do more with my life. And so, anyway, I came back from the seminar and I asked my manager if I could work remote in Hawaii. So, keep in mind, this is 2018. I know working remote from anywhere in the world is super trendy now with COVID and everything. But in 2018, this was such a crazy ask. There was actually, because I was in my mind, I'm like, what are the possible scenarios? One of the possible scenarios in my mind with it was that he was going to fire me on the spot for being such a dumbass. That's how like crazy this idea was.
Uh,
But luckily he agreed. And so I moved
what
to Hawaii.
what was that? So um, let's unpack just a little bit looking back hindsight, the conversations we tell ourselves in our head about why you weren't even willing to ask. Like, imagine had you let fear talk you out of asking.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because for the 6 months prior to me actually asking him, I had been thinking about it a lot. And as a matter of fact, I had a friend, I would talk to him about it a lot. Like, I really want to ask him, but I'm too scared. And so when he finally said yes, I told this friend, like, hey, I asked my manager, and it was like actually not even an issue. And he goes, you were worried for 6 months and you like were worrying about nothing. And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah, and the
that
thing
really
is,
puts it in perspective.
well, I think I don't know, maybe it's awareness, age, something, but that has an impact on your body, your physiology.
Oh,
People don't think that worry, concern, how much of a physical impact it can impact your sleep, your anxiety, all kinds of stuff.
yeah, well, I left this part out of my story because I'm not sure at which part it happened, but I actually ended up developing an autoimmune disorder. It was actually in 2017, like after
Hmm.
I was already like torturing my physical body with
Right.
overexercise and undereating. I had high anxiety that I wasn't managing. So I had all this chronic stress, but then it was like the acute stress of the breakup and my dad dying. And I ended up developing an autoimmune disorder. But stress can kill you, because I'm sure like you have stories too after you left your corporate job. Like I had all these health issues that like pretty much went away 2 weeks after I quit my corporate job. So, yeah, stress absolutely affects your health.
So what was it? So the boss says yes. Um, so you must have been elated.
Oh, I
Now,
was so excited, but then but then it was just kind of like, what next? Because I had the permission, but then I'm like, this is so terrifying and such a huge move. I don't know what to do. So I didn't do anything.
analysis
And
paralysis kind of a thing.
basically, and so I actually owned my condo in Chicago. So I'm
Mhm.
like, well, the first step would be seeing how much my condo is worth, right? But again, I thought about it and then I didn't do anything. So then one day I ran into one of my neighbors in the hallway and we were talking and I was like, I just need to put it out there because I haven't told anyone. So I told her, I was like, hey, I'm moving to Hawaii. And she was like, oh, if you need to sell your condo, my best friend's mom is a realtor.
Oh
So I'm
wow.
like, okay, I have zero excuse now. But even then, in my mind, so I call the realtor and I'm thinking it's going to be below market value and I'm going to lose money. So it's not going to be worth it to move right now. So I call this realtor. She assesses the market value, and I had only owned for 4 years, but I intentionally bought
Hmm.
in a hot neighborhood, so it was already worth $40,000 more than what I
Oh
had
wow.
purchased. So again, it's like here, like the universe was like, here you go, like you're ready to move. So I sold my condo and getting ready to even put it on the market, that set the ball rolling for the other things because I started calling moving companies and I had to ship my car and do all this other stuff. So that like calling the realtor really is what got the ball rolling because I was just kind of sitting in indecision, not really doing
Yeah,
anything.
man. So it's like making a decision. Um, what's your what's your mental state like at this time? How's your relationship with some of your habits? Because you haven't fully gotten to running in slippers yet, but we're on our way there. So, what is that like? Um, what is your emotional state like? What is your relationship with some of your past kryptonite, if you will?
Yeah, so by this point, I think I had tried a few therapists and
Hmm.
I had gone the traditional therapy route and it just didn't work for me because I didn't see the point of like I can talk to a friend
Yeah,
about my problems and that like it wasn't really helping. So it just wasn't really working. And the whole point of moving to Hawaii, my point was like I want to have a better life. I want to be happier. I want to do again, it was like
fulfillment.
I valued myself enough to do something for myself, which was a huge step for me at that time. But then I also had the self-awareness that you can't move away from your problems. And I knew I still had issues like
Because you're still
with
going there with finance.
yeah, so I had that level of awareness, but I think I was still avoiding my problems because I had all these logistical issues to work out with
Yeah,
actually moving, which is a valid concern, but I
yeah.
was using that to still run away from my
Avoid.
problems.
Yeah,
Yeah.
task avoidance. I do it.
Yeah.
Oh, I attended a little Zoom webinar last night about procrastination, and they say oftentimes we procrastinate because one of our needs isn't being met, one of our basic needs. And
Mm.
I think when you think about it that way, like oftentimes if my sleep schedule's off, something like that. But then I think it's important to take a look at that and you can unpack it from an emotional level and go, okay, I'm not doing this. What am I really lacking? Is it bandwidth? Do I need food? Do I need sleep? Or is it something more?
Yeah, I think for me, I was just in a severe habit of abandoning myself in like so many different ways, and that was just another form of it. Like
But you
I'll
were
escape
making
my
so
problems.
much progress with you know, getting there and all that. Um, but yeah, go back to what you're like and where you're gonna start to make some of these changes of because like you can clearly see the pattern of I'm moving, but I'm not changing.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that pattern continued. And part of it was I expected the move to Hawaii to be similar to Chicago. Like, it's just going to be all novel. I'm going to make all these friends and be doing all this fun stuff. I get to Hawaii, and the reality was the locals have a very tight-knit community.
Right.
They're not welcoming
The
to
alleys.
newcomers. Yeah, especially white people. There's still a lot of
It
resentment, which I understand.
wasn't that many decades ago when you really look
Right.
at it.
Which is why I understand. And I get it. And also, there's the aspect I also understand now. A lot of people who move here are very transient. Like you have all of the military branches have
Yeah.
bases here. So military, they never stay. They're just here for a year or two, maybe not even that
Tourism.
long. Yes, you have other people who they have this because the reality of living in Hawaii is not the same as vacation. So some people come on vacation here and they are like, "Oh, I want to move there," and they get here and they understand the stark difference and then they leave. Because I had a friend live here, I knew the realities of actually living here. So that didn't affect me, but it did affect my integration into, assimilating to the culture because nobody was interested in being friends with me. And I get it now because when you see a newcomer, the first thing you think is, how long are they going to last?
And not
And
only
you
that,
don't,
though, but what do they want from us?
true, because it's like people were very suspicious of me. I like that you brought that up. Like in the building where I live, that was another thing. I bought a condo immediately because I
Do you
wanted
want to
to
buy
like.
and sell? Are you a land person? Are
Yeah,
you
because
this? It's like,
but
what do you
but
want
for
from
me
us?
it was to prove that I was all in on my
Oh,
decision, but it was kind of looked down upon to the other owners in the building because I'm just like this white girl who just came from the mainland and I just bought one of their properties and I was not welcome at all. Like, as a matter of fact, just in terms of my building, nobody even talked to me for like a year. They would just give me like the stink eye and look at me, and nobody was even interested in talking to me. And, I was used to in Chicago, most people are very routined. So I was able to like make friends at the gym or places that I went because everybody would be there at the same time. You see the same people. So you get to start talking to them, and that's how you make friends. It's not like that here. That a lot of people are not on routines. So I was like shocked that like to go to the gym and I would see different people every time and nobody wants to talk. And it actually took me a very long time to make friends. And then COVID happened. And so I had a very rude awakening into life here. And that's just one aspect. The other aspect was as soon as I moved here, I moved and I kept my job. But then there was like this huge management shakeup. A lot of people got laid off. My manager actually quit, but I think it was proactively. So he didn't get laid off for like a year, basically up until COVID. So like it actually was over a year. I just lived in constant fear of getting laid off. And it's like I just moved to Hawaii. Remote jobs were not popular. I was like, I am so
and were you worried
screwed.
about the boss who possibly approved your move of them going, hey, come back, he's gone?
Um, Initially, yes, but my new manager was thankfully amazing. And I was like such a good worker. Like again, it was the same concept. He didn't care where I was as long as I was getting the job done. But if because there was like the shakeup, things could have changed at any minute where I could have been under someone else. And to your point, yes, I was like, are they going to make me like move somewhere else to keep my job? So it was constant fear of my job, which is my financial security.
Right.
I didn't have a lot of friends. My condo, I bought immediately, like a month after I moved in here. A month and a half after I bought it, it totally flooded. A shared pipe in the building like backflowed into my bathroom. I wasn't home. My entire condo flooded. So you can imagine that would be stressful, period, no matter how long you've
Yeah.
lived in a location. But this is like a brand new condo, brand new to Hawaii. I'm already stressed about my job. I'm already stressed about not having any friends. And then my condo just totally flooded.
How are you staying So how are you staying grounded and
I wasn't.
connected?
And that
Um,
and that's and that's what led to my so yeah, I was not. Let's just put it that way. And then COVID happened, which totally exacerbated everything.
yeah,
Um, because I just felt so restricted and isolated, and it was scary. It was, and the restrictions in Hawaii were pretty strict.
yeah,
And so for me, I was like, the only thing I was doing every day was taking a walk, but it was not enough. And in Hawaii, I think the issue was the state doesn't have jurisdiction over the ocean. So they
mm,
can't dictate any rules. They said you can't be on the beach, but
right,
they can't say you can't be in the ocean.
right,
So every day I would take a walk where I had a view of the ocean and I would see people surfing. So I was like, okay, I need to learn how to surf so I can do something illegal outdoor, or excuse me,
yeah,
legal. Because even walking in certain areas, because you couldn't walk in parks.
hmm,
So even like walking sometimes was like on the cusp of being illegal. So I was like, I need to find something legal to do outdoors. I was a city person. I was terrified of the ocean, but I was like, I just have to do this. So I had taken a surfing lesson the summer before. I didn't really like it, but my point is the surf instructor that I took a lesson with, I had his phone number and I was certain that he would be down to give me lessons during COVID, even though he wasn't supposed to be.
right,
Um, and I was correct. He was down to give me lessons during COVID. So I started taking surfing lessons with him. But even this story does not end well because so he was married, and when I took my first lesson with him during COVID, he told me that his wife had just moved back to New Zealand, which was her home country.
hmm,
And the reason he told me was because apparently healthcare in New Zealand is free. So if
yeah,
she were to get COVID, everything's fine. Like sold me some story that was believable. And but then anyway, so we started to become friends, and as we became friends, he confided in me. He's like, "Well, she actually moved back because we're separated, and when she comes back, we're getting divorced." And so then our relationship turned from like friendship to romantic because in my
hmm,
mind, he's getting divorced.
right,
And actually, I take that back. What he said was when she comes back, what did he say? He did not use the word divorce. Let me just put it that way. So, as you probably have noticed,
yeah,
like this isn't going to end well. So, anyway, 6 months later, she did come back. And that's when he finally told me that to get her green card, they had to be married on paper for 2 more years and they were not getting divorced. And he actually threw that in my face. He was like, I never told you that we were getting divorced. So keep
hmm,
in mind all this other shit. And I'm also leaving out things. My grandma died. I had like a toxic friend. There were other things in addition to like these bigger pieces that I'm telling you about. COVID, it was severely isolated and restricted. This person, I call him Ozzy in my book. That's not
hmm,
his real name, so I'll call him Ozzy here. I was hanging out with Ozzy every single day. We hung out all the time. He was like the only person I was really talking to because all of these other social restrictions.
right,
So this would have been difficult outside of COVID. But the fact that I had to let go of this person who was like
the
the
only thing,
only thing that I had going on for me. And I had to give up surfing because I didn't feel confident to surf on my own. So that was the
yeah,
story I was telling me. Like I can't surf either because like I can only surf with him. So I basically had a total emotional breakdown. I had been taking these pills for anxiety. I think I always pronounce the name wrong. I call it clonazepam.
hmm,
It's basically the same class as Xanax. It's a nervous system suppressant. I would usually only take a half pill because a half pill would knock me out for 8 hours. So if I
right,
took it before I went to bed, I was out cold for 8 hours. So I took an entire bottle of these pills. It was like over 30. And I ended up being unconscious in my shower for a day and a half. Miraculously, I somehow texted a friend who took me to the hospital, which then led to like an overnight stay in the psych ward, which was like super traumatic, and I won't go into here. But unfortunately, it took that experience for me because I got out of the hospital and I was like, okay, something needs to change. And I was basically like, I will do anything, I will pay any amount. Like, that's when I got 100% serious about like, I have to
It's
fix
something
all
within
this.
inside me.
Yes, I have to fix all these things I've been running from because it just hadn't been working. It wasn't going to work. And I had hit that rock bottom and it just wasn't going to get better unless I got help.
So is it the feeling of hopelessness that propelled you to take all the pills, or what? I mean, I get it. I've had plenty of suicidal ideation and this thing of like, well, but for me, there's a difference because I'm married and I have a child, and
Yeah.
I go, you know, I would be leaving. Well, let me put it to you this way: as a male, a father, husband, and all that, a viewpoint can be that they would be better off without me because I'm
Yes.
complicating things. My shit is, because I'm so messed up in the head sometimes that, yeah, they would be way better off without me. You didn't necessarily have that situation because when you were talking about it earlier, I was sitting there thinking, did you have a partner when you came to Hawaii or you came totally solo? But now I know you had Ozzy, so you were totally solo, so I can kind of get it. But you're not leaving anyone behind, like they'd be better off without me. Where was your mind? What? Yeah.
That's a good question because, and I openly talk about my suicide attempt because I think suicide has like such a stigma around it. And
Yeah.
I think the biggest one that's triggering to me is that it's selfish. And I understand why someone might say that. Like, for instance, like if you have a family
Hmm.
and you commit suicide, people could say, oh, it's selfish because now, like, the people who are left behind have
But
to
I
deal
feel
with it.
less selfish. I feel like it's not selfish because you're
S-
giving them something better because now they don't have to deal with you
And that,
being the way
and
you
that's
are.
just it. So and that's the flip side of it, right? So there's that part of the mindset because I honestly didn't think anyone would care. And I know that may sound extreme or whatever, but
No,
that
but
was
listen to the
truly my,
story you've just told. Like
yeah.
the disconnection from the beginning. Why would you expect anyone to care?
Yeah, I honestly didn't think anyone cared. And also to your point that you mentioned a little earlier, I can't even describe the sheer hopelessness that I was feeling. I have felt hopeless before, but like in that moment, it was like n- I truly believed nothing would ever get better. So it's like I don't want to do this anymore. And it's like to me, there's nothing selfish about any of that. It's like a self-preservation. Like
Yeah.
I feel just
Well,
yeah.
because the other part is, well, if if continuing on, I'm not contributing to the world, making it a better place or anything, I'm just hindering it, then yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
because
how
it's
I feel when I get that way. It's because I feel like I'm either a hindrance to my circle or the world.
yeah, and it's the same concept. Like if I'm in a vegetative state, like pull the plug.
Yeah.
So it's the same concept. Like I'm not okay
What's the point
mentally.
of
Like,
existing? Like taking
yes,
up space.
because your quality of life when you're in that mental state is just as bad if you're a vegetable physically.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm. Man. Well, I think, well, I, yeah, I don't want to word it that way. It's not, it's not strength to, you know, I could say like, well, I've never done it because I'm too much of a pussy. But that's a good thing to be a pussy about because it's not
no.
something I want to do. It's not something. but it takes a level of rock bottom to say, fuck it, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I think another stigma is like I've heard people describe suicide victims as cowards.
Hmm.
It was that was the most terrifying thing I've ever done.
Because
To
you can't undo
be,
it.
you can't
Can't
undo
stop
it.
it. Once you do it,
To
it's done.
Yeah, because after I swallowed all the pills and laid down, I I can't describe that
It's
feeling
like
either.
people who jump off the Golden Gate. There have been very few survivors, but I know that was
They
one of my
always regret it.
considerations. Yes, as soon as they jump, they say they regret it. And I worked in a level one trauma center, and I remember somebody jumped off the top of a building in downtown Austin, and hit the concrete, made it to us in the ER, made it to the OR, and died in the OR. Of course, he was so jacked up from hitting the pavement and stuff. It's like you got people poking and prodding on you. They can't give you any pain medication because it's going to tank your blood pressure. It's like, yeah, note to self, don't ever fucking jump off a building because all you're going to do is be in pain till you fucking hit the OR and then you're going to die. Um,
Really.
yeah, but that's where I think of like, yeah, put that in the journal of what not to do. But yeah,
Don't
it's
overdose on pills either.
yeah, it's gonna, I don't know. I feel a lot of way about that, but I can empathize with it because I've been there. I've never tried. I don't want to. My thing is with a one of the big things that kind of steered me away, even when I've gotten into those desperate feelings, is they say that if you as a parent do it, then your child there's a 1 in 3 chance. And the way I feel of going like, oh, the reason I would do it is to take burden off of my family.
Right.
Um, well, I'm adding a burden. And that's kind of one of the mental jujitsu things that kind of helped me put that topic as it relates to me into perspective.
And that's
Because
why I like talking about it though, because like if you Google suicide survivors, it's referring to the family and friends of the person who committed suicide.
mm,
It's a suicide attempt survivor is someone like me who actually survived the attempt because I think most people don't survive. So then the focus is on the people left over. But again, I think there's just like such a misconception though, like if a man commits suicide and leaves his wife and child, it's like, why did he do this to us? Or, you know what I mean? It's like, but I feel like it needs to be, and I know it's not easy, but I feel like it needs to be viewed as more of a lens of compassion. Like, wow, he was in so much pain
yeah,
that he couldn't even stand being alive. And I'm happy that he's no longer suffering. And again, I know that's not an easy mental
no.
shift to make, but I think that's the lens that people need to start thinking about.
It's hard to understand, I guess, unless you've truly been suicidal yourself. Like
Agree.
true,
Because,
not like pretend, not like crying for help, because the truth of the matter is when I feel that way, I don't tell people. I'm not looking for anything.
and that's just it. Like,
They're not going
if
to tell
someone
you.
is, yeah, if someone is like claiming that that's what they want to do, they're probably not suicidal. That's my theory. Because
Yeah,
people who are really serious about it don't talk about it because
they
you
just do
don't
it.
want anyone to stop you.
Yes, exactly. Yep. I know. I've always said, well, if it was really that bad, then we're going to put on a Depends and we're going to get some heroin. 20 years ago, it was like, well, because I've always heard that heroin overdosers, they don't know they're dying. And when you hit them with the Narcan, they're actually pissed that you ruined the best high of their life. And so I was like, well, that seems to be the way. But yeah, no, I don't even think about that anymore. But I try not to. I try to keep myself out of that state. But once you once you kind of survive this, let's say you come to, how does it kind of play out? You call a friend, you go to the hospital, you go to the psych ward. Do you have family members and or friends that prove you wrong and that nobody will care? Because how did you get yourself out of this? How did you take the inventory and realize to give yourself some worth? Because I know a lot of it has to do with self-worth.
Yeah, so a few things happened. One, when I was in the hospital, first of all, it's COVID. They confiscated all my clothes, my purse, my phone. I was between the emergency room and the psych ward. I was there for a day and a half. So I get released from the hospital. And it's funny, like they couldn't even give me my real clothes. They gave me, I guess people donated clothes to
Yeah.
the hospital. So they gave me these weird clothes and they gave me two plastic bags with my purse and clothes. And they were like, you can open these when you get outside. And so I got outside and I have like no ride or anything. So I was like, I guess I have to order an Uber. So I open up my phone. It starts like blowing up with text. And one was from a friend. I was supposed to go to a workshop she was having the day before. And she was worried about me because she's texting, like, are you okay? My phone was off, so I can't see if I had any missed calls. But anyway, so I get home and I called her and I told her what happened. And I said, I can't believe I didn't die. And her response was, it's not your time. And it like gave me chills. So that like solidified, like I knew I was still kind of high too. So it's like I knew something needed to change, but I was still kind of high. So things weren't sinking in. But when she said that, it like sobered me up for a second. And I was like, okay, number one, I need to find my purpose. And number two, this was someone who cared about me because I wasn't responding to her text and whatnot. Also, the friend who took me to the hospital, she was the second person I talked to. I went to her house and she was very smart because I was like all blacked out when all that stuff was going on.
Right.
When she was at my house picking me up, she apparently got the pill bottle out of the trash can so that she could tell the hospital like what I had taken. And so because of that, she knew what I took. And so when I was in the hospital, she went home and was Googling about it. Like makes me want to cry. She thought I was going to die. So like when I like met up with her, she was just started crying. She was like, I thought you were going to die. And that was like the second person was like, I felt like an asshole because I was like,
Yeah.
oh shit. Like if
I
she would
guess
have
I
been
was
sad,
wrong.
there would have been, yeah, other people that were sad. So that's when I got help. And I actually, I got help because I knew traditional therapy didn't work. And so I had met this coach at a healing intensive. He's actually a men's dating coach, but like we followed each other on Instagram, and he's not like a pickup artist
Right.
men's coach. He teaches men how to be authentic and how to be confident and be themselves, basically like be a better person and you will
Yeah.
attract a better person, right?
Right.
So it wasn't that I was a man looking to date. It was like, oh, that's what I need for me. So I
Almost like
actually
work on
reached,
yourself.
yeah. So I reached out to him and actually got coaching from him, and which is why I'm doing coaching now to like pay it forward because it was so valuable for me. So I was like, I want to do this for other people.
Man, so you get out, you undergo some coaching, and so I'm guessing this coaching and in this process, you're doing some soul searching and figuring out kind of what's next. Well, where does running in slippers and kind of that next step, when do you kind of maybe transform? Do you have a moment when you're like, I'm going to be okay and I think I have something?
So running in slippers came about so I actually had a discovery call with the coach
Mm-hmm.
because I like reached out to him. He's like, "Yeah, let's have a conversation." And again, I had actually thought about reaching before my rock bottom. I had actually thought about reaching out to him, but I'm like, that's so weird. He's a men's dating coach. He's going to think I'm weird.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, once you hit a rock bottom moment, you have no shame and nothing to lose. I like reached out to him immediately. And I'm so incredibly thankful because in my mind, I'm like, if he thinks I'm weird, I'll just move on to someone else.
Right.
Thankfully, he was totally open to the conversation. But anyway, so picture this, like I'm only like a week out from getting out of the hospital. I can't even describe how I felt. Like in the initial days when I got out of the hospital, it basically felt like I didn't have skin because I was just so sensitive to like every single thing and life just felt so fragile And my only goal every day was just to make it through the day. And like I was not in a good place. So I can only imagine how I appeared to him because we had a Zoom call like this.
Yeah.
And I was like holding on for dear life, trying to keep it together, but I'm sure he could see that I was struggling. But he asked me, he's like, if you could do anything you want, you didn't have to worry about money, what would you do? And I was like, well, I have this idea for a book. I want to write a really vulnerable memoir because I feel like, what we see on Instagram and even in real life, it's all fake and filtered. So I want to write this like really raw and vulnerable book. And like the whole point is connection through vulnerability. And then I want to do all these speaking events. So then there's like these little love tribes that feel safe to connect through vulnerability. I'm telling him all this. And I finish, and he was like, do you like realize how lit up you were when you just told me that? And
I
I
was
could
just thinking
totally,
the same thing.
okay, yeah, and I could feel it like in my
Yeah.
state because again, I'm like jumping on this call, fighting for my life. And then I get all into telling him about this, and I did feel lighter.
Does it almost seem
And
delusional coming a week out of the hospital? I think of this story of Taylor Kavanaugh, who's a Navy SEAL, and he talks about kind of being in a psych ward or something. I'm pretty sure, and his dad or something, he's like telling his dad his plans, like these big grandiose plans. Like, dude, you don't even have shoelaces in your shoes, and you're
yeah,
like, and so you're
that's a
like,
great that's
you
a
come
great
out of a
metaphor
week
because
and you're like, oh, I got this, and I'm like thinking as a coach, he could either be like, there's two things: either there's a sense of delusion, or there's a sense of passion, which is what he detected.
yes. And the reason why that was important, because first of all, it took me, and I don't want to sound discouraging because there were like in my coaching progress, there definitely were bright moments.
Yeah,
But I think it took me like 6 months to a year to like really get to a place where I was like making bigger strides. However, in that moment, because it was such a struggle to make it through the day, and this sounds dark, but I'm gonna say it. I felt even worse than I did before I tried to
mm-hmm.
kill myself. And I knew taking a whole bottle of pills didn't work.
Oh,
So my mind was like, I live in a 25-story building. I'm like, what other ways would work? But again, I'm like, I can't, I just need to like take some steps in the right direction and that'll get me out of this. But it was hard. I am not lying. It was so hard. So I was like, so after I had that conversation with my coach, my friend told me it's not your time. Pablo, my coach, was like, do you realize how lit up you just were? And we didn't work specifically on the book and my coaching, but in that moment, I was like, if I start writing this book, it will give me a sense of purpose. And that's all I care about right
a
now
direction.
because having that sense of purpose will get me out of these dark thoughts. So that was my primary motivation for starting the book. But then it actually became my sense of purpose because the more I saw of because what is the term if you're buying a new car you start seeing that car everywhere.
Yes, I
so
know what
be,
you're talking about.
yeah, because I had gone through this experience, I was seeing more testimonies of people who had pulled themselves out of dark places, and not only
Mm-hmm.
that, but they're just speaking about things that are not all rainbows and unicorns because I feel like on a lot of podcasts or social media,
Mm-hmm.
like that's all people want to talk about. I'm so successful and my life is so great, but that's just only like a fraction of your
I
life.
started
Like,
this because I needed a direction. So similarly,
yeah,
at least recording or something, it gave me something. Because when I think when you feel that way and you come from a corporate world like me getting laid off, I had all this time. And so I didn't have a pattern, a schedule or anything. And so at least the podcast was like, it gave me something to concretely focus on and put energy into. And then the cathartic part of it, of saying I was depressed or whatever, similarly to you, like writing a book, getting that out became the therapy kind of.
yeah, it's
And the
super
purpose.
relatable. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just kept going. You know, but
This is your purpose, though. Like,
yeah,
isn't there like a term like rejection is just a redirection? Like, what if you
yeah.
wouldn't have gotten laid off from your job?
Well, and you know, the other thing I think of is, 20 years ago, it's like there wasn't a thing of like, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? A podcaster. No, for me, it was about taking perspective and being able to have conversations with people like you and go, whether it's my layoff, whether it's your situation, that, hey, somebody else has been here and you too can get through it. Um, and it is possible. There is hope. I think that's what hope and perspective, you know, that's what it's
Yeah,
all
I
about.
agree. I totally, and that's another reason why I like to share my story because, and again, like people see me how I am now. I should actually ask my coach because at one point he made a comment. He's like, I should show you some of the videos from when we started working together because I was not okay.
Yeah.
But I actually should ask him for those because people see me now and they're like, I have people tell me, like, you're so confident and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, first of all, this isn't my 100% of my life. Like,
Right.
I don't feel like this all the time. But also, it took a lot of intentional
Hmm.
work to get here because, yeah, that feeling of hopelessness, I never want to go there again. And I share my story for people who are there or going in that direction. Like, there is hope to pull yourself out of it. If I
Connect.
can do it, anyone can do it. And that's actually the message I always like to say because I was obviously, and I'm only giving you like the cliff notes because we only have so much time, but I was in the worst place possible and I was able to pull myself out. So, yes, if I can do it, anyone can do it.
So once things start kind of picking up, you're writing, you're doing, you're kind of making progress. Is there is there a specific point you can remember, like, okay, I don't necessarily, like, I want to throw suicidal ideation out. I don't want to go back there, and I want to move forward. Um, and yeah, was there kind of a specific moment that you're like, I got this, and I'm gonna go forward and just I'm gonna try my best not to go back to where I was.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you the truth. And on that note, I have to text a friend because I was supposed
Yeah,
to call
go
her
for it.
now, but I'll call her later. So sorry if this
Okay,
messes up your
no,
editing.
you don't.
That was
No,
like my only concern. I'm like, he's going to have to edit this out now.
I
Um,
I don't mind. And sometimes too, the other part of it is, hey, this is a real conversation. I always say my podcast, they're not editing competitions. It's about the value
okay.
of the conversation.
Plus, I like what you asked is like super important. So I want to for later. Next. Yeah, even if you don't edit this out, I don't care.
I love the real and rawness. This is, we're trying to change the world here, and we can only change the world
Yeah,
with truth and
same.
honesty.
I don't edit like any of my like if I edit a video, it's just for like to piece it together. I
Yeah,
don't edit out any flaws or same thing with my pictures on Instagram. I don't edit them at all because I'm like, this is who I am. So,
agreed.
but anyway, so that was in 2020. I would say it's only been a year where
Mhm.
I haven't had any thoughts of it at all. So, and I don't want to say that in a way that discourages people, like, oh, it takes 4 years to crawl back out of the hole. And this is something I learned from my coach to on your journey, because you're never there, right?
Yeah,
But on your journey, the goal is just to be more than 50%. So, like, my goal on any given day is to be more than 50% in a state where I'm not thinking about
yeah,
suicide, because that's obviously a way greater percentage than I was for
yeah.
40 years of my life. Um, because even in when I published my book in 2020 and I also went on the podcast circuit at that time. Yeah, it was a circus too.
Yeah,
to promote my book, but one of the podcasts I went on, it's called Suicide Noted by Sean
Mhm.
Wellington. He only interviews suicide attempt survivors. And he gets super dark. He does edit his because we talked for like over 2 hours, and I think his episodes are only like 45 minutes to an hour. But one of the questions that he asked me, and he probably did not edit this out, and this again, this is 2022, so this is 2 years later. He was like, if someone could give you a pill where you could just end it without pain, would you take it? And I said yes. And that was my true answer at that time because it's a struggle. And another reason I talk about this is because keep in mind I hit rock bottom. So it was hard to pull myself out of that. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but the reason I like to talk about this stuff is because if you can catch yourself before you get there, it's not going to be that hard. Because keep in mind, I was like in the worst possible situation ever. So it was like such a struggle. Um, and I'm not going to sugarcoat how hard it was. And I still had moments. Again, they became few and far between as the years went
Yeah.
on. But I still had moments of like, this is too hard. I don't want to do this anymore. But I never really, I would even, I guess I could call it ideation, but it's like I wouldn't really, whereas before I would actually plan, like I
Yeah.
actually had this idea, like, well, if I went on this hike and jumped off this cliff, like I'd actually have ideas about how to do it. And again, once you survive, you have to think about it has to
What
be
if I?
100%. Yeah, because it's like I'm not going to try it again and survive. Like that wasn't an option.
Because
Because
then you'll
even
be
to your
pulling
point,
yourself out of something else.
yeah, because even to your point, people have survived the Golden Gate Bridge. Not many,
Yeah.
but so I'm like trying to think like what is impossible to survive. So like you start going down that dark hole. Um, but then it got to the point where I wasn't even thinking about how I would do it, which in my mind was a win. I know that
Yeah.
seems like a weird
No,
win,
I agree.
but when I wasn't thinking about like, oh, how would I do it? I just had the feelings. I knew I had the tools to manage the feelings.
Yeah, it is. It's a struggle. I think it's important to talk about. I think um, people who truly don't know, maybe they just, but you have to. I mean, talking about it, the truth and honesty about it is the only way I think to overcome it. And so other people know, like, hey, you're not the only one. This is a feeling. Um, but yeah, it's waves, like the feeling, if you have the tools and you can reframe, the feeling can pass. Or you can buy yourself enough time for the feeling to pass. How about that? Um,
Yes, I like that.
that's the key
But yeah,
part.
but the tools are key because like I had never had those before. It changed my life, and I'm not even exaggerating. Because it's like, oh, I can manage my emotions now. Where it's like before I felt like I had no control and they were all consuming.
Do you have a go-to tip for if something kind of pops in and takes your breath away and you get alarmed? Like, oh shit, I may be heading down that road, or do you have something that kind of takes you away, or do you have a process when it comes about?
Yeah, my favorite process, and I don't know if you're on Instagram or if you've ever
Mhm.
heard of her, but they count as the holistic psychologist. Because for me, my issue is like I get this like all-consuming feeling, and I feel like my feelings, whether it's like the anxiety, the sadness, or the depression, I feel like they're consuming me, and then I don't feel safe in my body, and then I have all these stories in my head going on about what that means. But she taught us that the psychological, or excuse me, the physiological feelings in your body they only last for 90 seconds. The reason why they last longer is because of like the psychological stories, because it's like,
You
I'm
attach
worried
a
about
narrative.
work. Yes, I'm worried about this. I'm worried about that. So the key is, and again, this is not always easy. I'm not going to sugarcoat this, but I have been successful most of the time doing this when I start feeling all consumed by my emotions, because you have to get to a point where you're regulated before you can use some of these tools. So
Right.
this one is like my first step where I just focus on the sensation in my body. And then I just keep telling myself I'm safe in my body
Oh,
because that way I can feel safe in my body. I'm only focused on the feeling in my body. And most of the time, it does go away in 90 seconds. Like when you first start, it seems like that's impossible. But then, yeah, when once you get rid of the narratives, it goes away. And then you're regulated to a point where you can start utilizing some other tools and actually, think
it's almost like
logically.
I feel like when you ever hear like a recording play over a recording, it's like you're just trying to get it out till the other recording disappears.
Ooh, I like
Or
that
that way,
analogy.
well, but you're almost by telling yourself a different story, you're cutting off the subconscious story that's attached to the emotion in the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's kind of one of those things of I remember hearing that when I was listening to one of your other episodes of when you brought that up is we have the feeling but it continues on because of the damn story we attach. So if you can stop the story or put a different one over it, and I love what you said about feeling safe in your body, and that way you can begin to make different associations when those feelings arise. Yeah, that was good. um, but okay, so now what is the so now what are you doing now? You wrote the book, you have a podcast, and you float through the emotions. Like you said, it's been about a year since, for me, it hadn't been quite a year since I've had the idea. But um, what are you focused on now? What is daily life like now?
So, this is a testament to how far I have come in my self-love journey because I was actually in corporate America for over 20 years. I was at the same company for 12 years. This is the
Oh, wow.
company that I moved from Chicago to Hawaii with. And I got transferred to a new team at the end of last year,
Mhm.
which ended up being a super toxic situation,
Mhm.
but in my coach calls it being a functional adult as opposed to like regressing to a child or teenager, which is what I was doing for most of my life. But in my functional adult state, I was able to assess the situation. And the truth was, the corporate culture at my company had not been aligned with me for many years.
Yeah.
I was not growing. I was complacent and just overall, it wasn't a good fit for me. So, this toxic situation was actually a gift for me to open my eyes and be like, hey, this isn't what I want to do anymore. I don't like being in corporate America. So, I totally quit without having anything else lined up, which was terrifying. However, I have the self-respect to know that I don't deserve to be treated how I was treated. I also now have self-trust. Like I know I'm the kind of person that can figure things out and make it happen. So I decided to start my own coaching business. So I call it Inner Glow Coaching for women. So basically, women who were like how I used to be,
Mhm.
people pleasing, self doubt, not having any boundaries, to develop the self respect and self trust, to set boundaries, develop intuition, which is a huge part of self trust, and just overall have the confidence to go through life and just stop doubting yourself because we're all worthy and have this bright light inside of us. Because, like, for me, it was moving to Hawaii and writing my book and following my life's purpose. And I dimmed that for so long. And it's like, just shine your light and do what makes you happy.
Man, it's so wild because I look at almost like the baggage you carried even to Hawaii, you
Oh,
know?
yeah.
So it's like, yes, the dream, but really it took so much to kind of uncover it like it was a stone or something.
Oh, yeah. Like the dream was actually learning to love myself,
Exactly. It
which
wasn't the
sounds
Hawaii.
so simplistic, And also I feel like it's hard to sell myself as a self-love coach because it sounds like affirmations or whatever.
No,
But it's like the key to everything. Like every single area of my
of your
life
life.
has improved simply by loving myself. And I'm talking even friendships. Like I used to have very, not all of my friendships were toxic, but some were extremely unsupportive, which you don't realize until you start respecting yourself. So, yeah, it affects everything.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things. I think once you look inside, well, because a lot of people don't realize that self-love and self-worth tie a lot more into boundaries and people pleasing. And um, if you do not have, and case in point, if you're this kind of person, just set a boundary with somebody. Just tell the next time somebody asks you, hey, you want to go do this? Just tell them no and see what they say. Like,
But then
even
you're
if
afraid
somebody
they
says,
won't like you.
yeah, and then even if it's a drink, like, oh, you want to go out for drinks, or you go to a bar and you just say, I'm not drinking. Just look at the reaction. Why? Why not? You're gonna have 10 fucking questions. Don't fucking worry about it. Maybe, how about, do you want the cops to show up? That's why I don't drink. How about just
Yeah,
respecting me for my decision? But it can be as simple as that. The moment
absolutely.
you
That
just don't agree, yeah,
and yeah, and that's why my focus with my clients is primarily on boundaries because that in itself will, there's other things, but that will change your life. Because yes, you don't owe anyone anything. And not only that, you don't owe an explanation. That's been a huge part of my work. Like, I
oh,
don't need to explain myself. Like,
because I
yeah,
don't
if I
want
don't
to.
want to drink, the answer is no. Like, if it's a friend or something, I might offer it because
Just to
I
let
just
them know.
am. But if someone is forcing an answer out of me, like, I don't owe that explanation. Like, my answer is no.
Yeah, it is. It's a, well, what I feel like I heard a lot of it this week was no is a complete sentence. Or
Yeah.
no, thank you.
Also, 'cause I used to drink a lot in my 20s and then
Uh-huh.
I stopped and traded that for the over exercising and under eating. So,
Yeah,
but when I stopped drinking, that's a huge thing that people will push boundaries on. And to this day, I'm not totally sure why. I think part of it is it makes them uncomfortable if they're the only one drinking
yeah.
but still, it's like, I don't know. I don't
It
know
is
why
a
that's
it,
such
it is
a
a
hard
weird one.
one.
It's a weird
It's
one.
a very weird one.
It's like, why don't you don't want to poison yourself? No.
Yeah.
I mean, me, it's like I don't have a problem with people who drink and can enjoy it responsibly. I just can't, I
Yeah.
know that about me, and that's okay. I don't feel like I'm being left out if you do it and I don't, or I'm not asking you to not do it. Um, but it's just one of those things of like, I don't know, because maybe it's the fact that you have to be 21 to do it. And so it must be good if it's restrictive and you must participate in
Ah,
it if
that could
if
be
you're not
it.
allowed to. I mean, it's like things you can't do. You can't drive a car as a kid. Well, so you must drive one as an adult. Well, not necessarily. Not if you live in NYC or Japan or plenty of
Right.
places that don't use public or who utilize public transportation. But that is kind of one of those weird things. But I offer that as a challenge to anyone. I mean, it doesn't have to be malicious either. Just say no to a common thing as a boundary and see how people react. But it's important. I think it's important to kind of discern, kind of like what that really means sometimes in terms of how it can be like a form of self-respect about asking just for what you want as opposed to what you don't want.
Yeah.
Like I mean, like let's say my wife, weird example, but she cooked chicken drumsticks one night, and I was like, I ate them, but I'm like, could we not do drumsticks anymore? Like I just really don't like them that much.
Yeah.
I eat them, but I would rather have breast meat or thigh meat or something. And but I go to this point of it's about speaking up. I mean, my wife and I've been together for 19 years, and she must think it's weird after 19 years to go like, please don't buy drumsticks anymore. Like I'll eat them, but I really don't like them. And but even something like that, saying something like that can be quite uncomfortable because you feel like, well, I don't want to make a mess or a big deal out of nothing that seems benign. But really, it's about the self love and respect I have for myself that I want what I want, and I want to keep out the things that I don't. It's really about becoming more refined. I feel like about saying yes to what I want and no to what I don't. And it can mean big things like jobs and careers, but it can mean a small thing like a chicken drumstick because how you do one
Yeah,
thing is how you do everything.
that's one of my favorite sayings. Also, I would also look at that boundary as you're respecting her, because what if she continued to make drumsticks and you continue to eat them, then you would just feel resentful.
I never thought of it
Even,
that way.
oh, really?
Even well, no, I see it. I see it 100%. That it's unconscious and subconsciously. If I'm sitting there going, I don't like it, and then I'm like, this motherfucker every time making drumsticks. Like, what do you mean? Like, she should know I don't like them, or you
Yeah.
assume like, oh, my disdain for it. But yeah, it is. I never. Yeah, but the point is I think like it can be something as small as that, and that's kind of why
Yes.
I bring that example up of it doesn't have to be the career because when you're starting off, I think if you've been entertaining the SI or you've had an attempt and survived, building self love, self care, self respect is a long process, and you have to kind of start with small things,
Yes.
and you need to,
Yeah, because I started small for sure.
yeah, and build up because it does take time. I mean, I got laid off in 2020. My rock bottom was July of 2022. And, even if rock bottom was July of 2022, I didn't even consider throwing away alcohol till June of 2023. So it still took
Yeah.
me a year after rock bottom to make a decision, to make an intentional decision to change. So yeah, I sat in rock bottom for 11 more months, which is bananas. I don't know
See, it
what.
isn't to me though, because like when you're in it,
Yeah,
it's easier when you're an observer of it to be like, oh, that's crazy. Or even like me reflecting on some of the things I did. Like, you couldn't pay me to reread my book because even in the editing process, it was hard to read because I had grown so much. And I'm like, this is so cringy. I can't stand reading this. So when you're an observer, it's easier to see it. But when you're in it, you don't see it. So
that's kind
I
of
don't think
how
it sounds crazy at all.
I look at my episodes, and what's funny is uh, probably what I'm most proud of in terms of the podcast is the progression and the growth. Because if you go back and you listen to the beginning episodes, you can see and you can hear in the topics that I'm still, I don't want to say disturbed, but I'm still not okay.
Yeah.
Uh, you're watching in real time me try to be okay with myself. And I'm still trying. Believe me, it is a fucking daily struggle. But I kind of like what you said in terms of almost going like I've always thought I felt a purpose of service and stuff, but maybe your true purpose is just to be okay with yourself, to love yourself, to be okay with yourself in the end.
Or just even be. Um, and I know that's like even like another step more profound, but like, because when you love yourself, like you're just okay with being. You don't have to achieve. You don't have, I mean,
My
it's,
my favorite my favorite shirt, my favorite podcast, or my favorite, yeah, one of my favorite humans, Scotty G, is just be with Scotty G, and it's be humble, be gracious, be present, and the shirt says be authentic, they'll adjust, but just
I
be.
love that.
It's hard to just be.
Wait, what is it? Just to be with Scotty?
Just be with Scotty G.
Just be. Okay. I'm
Yep.
writing it down.
Oh, you'll love it. He's an awesome human being, and yeah, I was on his show. He's been on mine twice. But it's in that he's like a alchemist, hippie, woo, just I don't know. but yeah, uh, we all need to get to that kind of state. But so you offer coaching. How do people find you, and do you offer free services? Do you have a website, blog, any what kind of tools do you offer?
So one way to reach me is I'm on Instagram. My handle is Angie Hawkins 808. If someone is interested in coaching, I actually do offer a free hour-long call,
Oh,
and you can reach out to me on my website. It is runninginslippers.com. So there is information about my book, but there's also information about coaching, and also my email, if you just want to reach out directly, is Angie at runninginslippers.com.
and do you or do you have any like WhatsApp, Facebook, private Facebook groups, or do you have anything for women or any sort of like personal one-on-one type once they get into the coaching, how's the correspondence? Is it like a month or like I do a certain type of coaching, but I have access to my coach therapist within WhatsApp all the time.
That's a good question. So, my most common package is my
Hmm.
6 month package, which includes a one on one call with me weekly for 60 minutes. There is limited correspondence through either text or email or WhatsApp, just depending on the situation. I would eventually like to start a group, whether it's with existing clients or just outside clients. I'm still figuring that out, but that's a long-term goal, is to actually have a community. Because again, I still haven't fulfilled my vision of the like
Still
love
in
pods all
progress.
around the world. Yeah, so I'm still thinking about how that's going to work, and it's still on my long-term vision goal, but I haven't figured that out yet.
Okay, so going through this whole process and arriving where you are and kind of making that deliberate decision of it's about me and I'm going to pursue this. What has been one thing that's happened that you never would have thought of happening in a million years as a result of trusting yourself, your intuition, and making a leap to take this journey?
Honestly, starting this coaching business, because I'm not gonna lie, I like shock myself sometimes. Like I'm like, oh my God, I quit my corporate job to
Hmm.
do like this. It feels crazy, but at the same time, it feels so aligned, which makes me realize how unaligned I was in corporate America. And that's just the thing. When you're tuned in to your intuition and trust yourself, like you can feel when things are aligned for you or not, which is another reason. Like I focus the most on boundaries and intuition because those two things will change your life. So I feel aligned and I feel like I'm on the right path.
Man, that is awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on today and
Yes,
spending
thank you for
time with
having
me
me.
and my audience. And, I think there was a lot of important information in there and a lot of honesty and brutal truth, but that's what we're here for. We cannot make the world a better place without being truthful and or accurate. So I thank you for that. And like I tell everyone, go out and be the person that you would want to meet. All right.